Well, as of the fall of 2021, 12 Ohio National Guardsmen that were at Kent State have interviewed for this project. And I believe that in itself is a success, but I think there are other measures of the success as well. A few media outlets have written stories about this project. I received a $1,000 grant from a former dean at my institution to continue the project. I presented on the project at the National Council of Public History. And actually over the summer, a documentary film team out of New York City reached out to me and inquired if I would be interested in serving as a history advisor on a documentary about the Kent State shooting. Yeah, any project has its failures, certainly. I wish I could convince every guardsman that I have spoken with about this project to sit for an interview. Certainly that has not been the case. In some cases, wives have told me not to call back. A lot of letters have gone unanswered. Grant applications have been rejected. And I was actually rejected from my only academic conference of my career thus far when I submitted an abstract to present about the Kent State Guardsmen Oral History Project. That rejection was interesting because the conference organizer asked if we would want additional feedback about our rejection, and I responded that I did, and I confided to this conference organizer that I was concerned that this project might be perceived by some to have kind of a conservative angle, or a kind of a right-wing or kind of a rightist bent to the project, and certainly that's not the intention here. The intention is to plainly say that there is a void in the historical record. There is a perspective that it has not been adequately covered, and I see it as my job, almost as a duty as a historian, to remedy this void. And the response I received from this conference organizer, which was a conference that sought to capture lost voices from history, said to me in an email something to the effect of, at the end of the day, these were still white men in uniforms that conducted, or that murdered students at Kent State. And that it was a kind of a loaded response, no doubt, from this conference organizer. One, I mean, the court said it wasn't murder. Yes, students died, but murder is a legal term. And then also, she was kind of showing her cards by the way she described the demographics of these guardsmen. Again, probably just not the demographic that that particular conference was looking for, or the lost voices of history they were looking for. I think a struggle with this project has been convincing some of the National Guardsmen to interview for the project. Oftentimes before I start recording, either by phone or on video camera, there is a lengthy conversation over the telephone in which at some level I have to convince this guardsman, who would be in his 70s or his 80s, that I really don't have a political agenda here. I'm not looking to drag their name through the mud like the media did with the guardsmen in the 1970s. That's not the point here. And sometimes it does take a little convincing on the telephone before they feel comfortable with me. And I think it's been an asset that I'm not affiliated with Kent State University. I think it would be difficult for someone in that part of the state to reach out to these guardsmen these former guardsmen and ask them to share their stories. At some level, the distance away from Kent, I think, works in my favor. Well, the collection of interviews here shows the vast array of experiences of these guardsmen. One guardsman on Blanket Hill may have experienced the Kent State shootings and the aftermath quite differently from a guardsman who was out of town, heard about the shootings, and then was trucked in within the hour. Okay? And then certainly those guardsmen who were involved in the trials throughout the 70s, they experienced the aftermath or the immediate memory of the Kent State shootings quite a bit differently, more intensely than those who were not mired in court proceedings. A number of guardsmen that we interviewed said that this tragic event really hasn't affected their life all that, has not affected their life all that much. It's not something that they think about on a daily basis, weekly basis, maybe even a monthly basis. And yet for others, I mean, this is really it really became kind of this formidable part of their life. Interestingly enough, I mean, some of the interviews, some of the guardsmen that chose not to interview for this project, I mean, I would later I found newspaper articles specifically about them, describing how they really struggled in the years after this in terms of mental health, that they really could not get past kind of how their role in the Kent State shootings. Well, I sense this project is nearing its conclusion. I do have a few leads on guardsmen who want to interview when the COVID situation has calmed down and they feel comfortable to sit for an interview. And then I would like to write an article for the Oral History Journal, and then perhaps even turn this into a book, a monograph kind of modeled on that of kind of a Studs Terkel history, or perhaps a Larry Ritter, The Glory of Their Times, sort of book where every single interviewed guardsman makes up his own chapter, and then I would provide an introduction and conclusion that describe the project as a whole.